I guess I would say there seems to be a unanimous view that NAC's best work was done when the issues were black and white, life and death, and when we worked in partnership with the institutions that represented the interests of the people. That was true of the legitimate and illegitimate in the eyes of the international community in Kosovo. The institutions that represented the interests, whether it was the KLA, which at various points in time was a terrorist group and later was a liberation army, and the government in exile, that all spoke from the same mission, if you will, about the future of the Kosovo people. The same mission applied in Macedonia. When the military movement began in Macedonia, the political message, the military message were identical, and the best work that NAC has ever done, actually I think anywhere in the Balkans, was in Macedonia. Because we were expert in the game at that point. We had mastered the skills and made all the right contacts during the war in Kosovo. And by the time we got to Preševa, we were refining the skills, and by the time we got to Macedonia, we were experts. I would say those were the three areas where there's very little criticism of what NAC did and what kind of work NAC did. Over the last number of years, since the independence of Kosovo, since the Ohrid Agreement, and since the still yet uncomfortable but yet stable situation in Preševa, NAC has sort of found itself where the community finds itself. We have corrupt governments all over the region that are our institutions. We have governments which, by the way, allow the foreign leaders in those markets to take advantage of us every day, because you will never hear Salih Berisha talk about any of the issues we're talking about here tonight. You will never hear any of the leaders from any of the countries that represent Albanian interests, other than fractional parties or smaller institutions, in formal settings ever raise these issues. The topic of Chamria has been raised by no one inside of Albania. So you're asking now, in this phase post these black and white issues, for NAC to do what governments can't do. You're asking for NAC with no media that's independent, because the region does not have any independent media. All the media works for various parties, and they're funded directly by those parties. The only independent sources play very carefully to exist at all, because it's a very dangerous job to be a true independent reporter in that part of the world. The media, the Albanian media here in the United States, is equally catastrophic. Completely aligned, weak financially, and completely beholden to interests or personal motivations. So we have a situation where the mass population of Albanians in this country are uninformed about the details of the status quo about or the state of affairs of Albanians in any of these regions. Most of the facts that were shared here tonight are known by a very small group that I think today still see themselves as activists. The problems that face Albanians in the Balkans are economic, first and foremost. The promise in Albania is that we're going to get into the EU so you can leave. That is the promise to the masses. We're going to get into the EU and into NATO so you can leave, my friend. Because the mass opportunity in Albania has been taken by the few. The political elite and the business elite have stolen everything. Nothing of consequence exists for the people to take advantage of. There are no public shareholder companies. There are no investment opportunities that aren't only available through governmental agencies. As a result, who speaks or fights for anything that matters? For example, who wants to educate the people of Albania? Every single year, the government of Albania tries to limit and reduce the budget for education. The budget for the cultural institutions in Albania has been eliminated completely. In fact, the cultural ministry, which used to be an equal ministry with other ministries in Albania, has now become a subsidiary of the Ministry of Education and has a complete total budget of $200,000. I would see the people in the state of Albania, which is the state that we have to rely on the most today, as failing us utterly. Because the leadership in Albania provides the role model for what we as Albanians throughout the region are trying to be. And it also is the role model that other states in the region point to our leaders. I mean, even in Montenegro, for example, where we have an abomination of leadership. they say to them, well, if you don't like it, go to Albania. It's no different there. And so corrupt nations take pity and comfort with each other because they understand each other. And in fact, the reality of the matter is that all of those nations at the national leadership level are in business with each other. I mean, the senior-most business elite, if you want to call them really business, in Greece do business throughout the region with each other. The senior-most leadership in Albania are completely business-tied with Serbs, with Kosovars, with Macedonians, with Montenegrins, and so forth. The rest of the political noise is rhetoric. It's not real. It's about profiteering and taking advantage by the few, with the goal to keep the masses quiet and peaceful and stable, being simply, when we get into the EU, you can leave. That's your mission. That is your agenda. That is your opportunity. And by the way, we, the few who have taken everything, will sell everything, because they intend to sell everything. And when we sell everything, we will give ourselves amnesty for all of the ways in which we got these things. And by the way, we will be individually rich. But what will happen to these countries when they sell everything? Albania is close to selling almost everything. There's almost nothing left in Albania. Kosovo is getting pretty close too. What do the remaining people who do not have the intelligence and the intellect, because most of those will leave first. Those that have resources, knowledge, and capability will leave first. But what's left behind? The elderly, the very young, and the least educated. And those people will become the slave labor of the companies that buy the assets of those nations and make them opportunities for their profit, largely owned by foreigners. So the nation, this is my worst fear, and this is why I raised this topic, because among the people here are among the most active. I mean, some of the people here I've seen active my whole entire life. And I raise this because I think the strategy that we're heading down is the evisceration of anything that we know to be Albanian. By the time Albania gets into the EU, by the time the next generation comes along, no one will speak Albanian, no one will publish an Albanian book, no one will write anything of any consequence in Albanian, and the identity that was mentioned earlier of Albanians is in grave danger for my children's future. I'm very proud to be Albanian. I think Sabria was giving me compliments for that. I did not choose to be Albanian, but I was born an Albanian. I educated myself as to what that means because I grew up in New York not really knowing what that means, because I was an Albanian from Yugoslavia and there really was no such identity. As I grew up and I came to appreciate who we are, and what is a civilization we've survived through, I find that our greatest risk and our greatest danger as a people is not the foreigners, but ourselves. If we do not know how to build and invest in our educational institutions, we have no future. If we do not care to protect a free media that actually enlightens a people to fight for something better tomorrow than they have today, then the best and most talented people will not be inspired to stay in Albania, but go elsewhere. And I mean Albanian territories in general. As we talk tonight, I think most of the problems we all highlighted are insurmountable as a NAC movement. NAC can be an inspirer of ideas. NAC can be a messenger of a movement within the confines of these places. But I think as leaders here, I think you owe it to yourselves to think of ways. And I don't know that NAC is a repository of great ideas here. I think NAC is an enlightened group that I think sees these problems and I think desires change. I've invested well over $1 million of my money personally. And I have leaders all over the Balkans who call me stupid because they say you didn't get anything for it. And you know, they don't see things the way most people in this room see. We got a free nation of Kosovo, which has the prospect of reuniting Albanians to make a 6 to 7 million person nation someday. That has the economic might perhaps to survive as a nation with an identity that was referred to earlier. There are opportunities that we can be optimistic about and work towards. The challenge, I think, for NAC, which is really the challenge for the whole community right now in the diaspora, is we all sacrificed. Some people volunteered and risked their lives to go fight directly, others of which gave big fortunes of their personal income, others of which sold homes to sacrifice for causes, others of which invited relatives and kept them in their homes for months and years at a time. The sacrifices that this community, particularly in America, has made is enormous. I think what is really at fault today is our expectations of what that investment was going to yield is under what we had hoped for. And today the question is, what do we do about it? I mean, I for one, you know, look at what we have in Kosovo and in Albania and in Montenegro and Macedonia, and I feel saddened by it, because I think we fought really hard and hoped for more. And the challenge today is you can't make it better, because the people